Infrastructure and Communities pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted by the committee on Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. The committee is meeting to continue its study on high-frequency rail in Canada. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of Thursday, June 23, 2022. Members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. I wish to inform the committee that all witnesses have been tested for sound and interpretation and have passed the test. Members appearing before us today as witnesses, we have from the Canadian Urban Transit Association, Mr. Marco D'Angelo, President and Chief Executive Officer. Welcome, sir. From the Chambre de commerce de Montréal, nous avons Michel Leblanc, Président par vidéoconférence. Bienvenue. From Unifor, we have Jennifer Murray, Director, Atlantic Region by video conference. Welcome to you. And Graham Cox, National Representative, once again by video conference. From Via Rail Canada, we have Mario Pélaquin, President and Chief Executive Officer. Welcome to you, sir. As well as Rita Toporowski, Chief Service Delivery Officer. I tried to get that right for your benefits, and I hope I did. Welcome to you both. Et de la ville de Trois-Rivières, nous avons Monsieur le maire Jean Lamarche.
Jean Lamarche from Trois-Rivières. Welcome.
With our opening remarks, and for that, I will turn the floor over to you, Mr. D'Angelo. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Good afternoon. It's great to be here this afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity. Le projet de train à grande fréquence.
Via Rail's high-frequency train project is not just a transportation initiative, it's a revolution that has the power to redefine the way Canadians travel, meet, and flourish.
It will connect Canada's largest corridor. That's Quebec City to Windsor. With already almost 20 million people living in the region and plans for another 5 million to move there, it means that having options that are sufficient, frequent, and reliable to connect Canadians affordably and quickly is paramount. En partant du port de la ville.
From Quebec City's port, from the historic capital, the train will pass through the heart of La Belle Province, across Ontario and the Greater Toronto area, to end near the Windsor-Detroit border, where millions of people and billions of goods transit from all over Canada. It's a major corridor, and the current capacity is insufficient.
The success of HSR relies on accepting the challenge and the promise of connecting people. So that means connecting with Canadians, consulting with transit authorities throughout the various project phases, and doing that early and often. So it was great that the HFR team has already been meeting with local transit systems like the TTC and others to have these important discussions. So maintaining a focus on the connections between the intracity HFR and intercity public transit is essential. From the design and development through day one of operations and beyond, we have before us an opportunity to build a connected travel experience in an era where more car traffic and short-haul planes will miss out on creating value by saving Canadians time and money and building on our productivity. Le projet de train à grande fréquence.
The high-frequency train project is not just a transportation project. It will reduce our carbon footprint. It will help to fight climate change. It will improve the quality of life for all Canadians.
That are coming online that will help us to build transit more quickly, and I think about the Permanent Public Transit Fund, the importance of which could not be overstated in this context. The $3 billion annual fund beginning in April 2026 will play a crucial role in providing the financial resources needed to support the transformational projects that will complement things like high-frequency rail. So these expenditures are also investments, more importantly, and investments in our nation's future. So continued support for Permanent Transit Fund and for transit systems will lead to a wide array of collective public benefits. De plus, le TGF offre des avantages sociaux.
In addition, the train offers social benefits by making it easier for Canadians to visit their loved ones, increasing accessibility for people with reduced mobility, and promoting social cohesion by bringing our country closer together. The economic benefits are just as important, as this project will create jobs, stimulate local economies, and encourage innovation in the transportation sector.
We briefly turn to transit-oriented development in communities. These offer sustainable and high-density living options, which are accessible through public transit. So by fostering TODs, we can reduce car dependency, lower our emissions, and create vibrant communities. So the time to act, we believe, is now, as Canada's population is expected to reach 45 or 50 million people in the coming years. Today's transit systems are designed for about 25 million. We know there's a demand for over 5 million homes by 2030. We need those to adequately address our nation's housing supply requirements. CUTA released a housing and transit paper here in Parliament just a few weeks ago. The report, I think, will be helpful for the committee members as you progress through your study. Transformational projects that will be funded through the Permanent Transit Fund, again, can advance these aims, keeping in mind that HFR makes the links between our corridor cities real. Le projet de TGF est une occasion.
The high-frequency rail project is a momentous once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to redefine the way we travel and live in Canada. It will strengthen our most important economic corridor. It will connect our communities, and it will pave the way for sustainable transportation for Canadians. Thank you. I look forward to answering any questions you might have about this vital project. Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Michel Leblanc. Mr. Leblanc, I'll give you the floor, 5 minutes, for opening statements.
Bonjour.
Hello. Thank you, members of the committee. And thank you for having invited the Chamber of Commerce to testify here today. First of all, I would say in the beginning that the rail project between Quebec, Windsor, has been receiving support in the business community for about 15 years. The will was to lead to a political decision, and there is no doubt in the mind of the Chamber of Commerce and in our analyses that our business people would like to see this project go ahead, and they will use it. Now, the project is called the HFR project, and I would like to tell you that in the business world, there is a lot of fluctuation between a support for a high-frequency project and another for high speed. And so when we do surveys, they tell us that the first element that will determine the use of the rail and its speed between Montreal, Quebec, Montreal, Ottawa, and Montreal, Toronto. And next, we have the reliability of schedules and the frequency. So I believe that as a committee, you have to keep these variables in mind, and I encourage you to keep them in mind in that particular order. So as a first element for discussion, from the point of view of the business sector, is to know if calls for tender will lead to proposals with high-speed sections, and that this should be a determining factor for the acceptability of the project, because it's going to be a very expensive project. The second element that is also very present and that was not about 10 years ago is the importance of the environmental footprint. For a long time now, we know that rail transport and electric rail transport is a good solution. It's ecological, but with the rapid shift and objectives sought by the governments and population, a high frequency and a high-speed electric rail is seen as being an essential element of greening our economy. In this context, there is a lot of support for downtown to downtown rail link. And if other methods of transportation need to be used to reach the station, this will undo part of what we're trying to do, that is to make use of the downtowns. Another file that has gained importance is the labor shortage. And when business people realize that with a high-speed train, this would broaden the recruitment field, whether it be larger cities or other towns, this is seen as being a huge advantage. The ability to have employees who live in Trois-Rivières, work in Montreal, is seen as being a good solution to make the workforce more fluid. So there's an additional argument in favor of the rail link, but also the speed of transportation is very important. I'd add that business people who travel a lot are quite sensitive for 15 years now to this reputation that Canada has, because we don't have a high frequency or a high speed rail. And so we look at what's happening elsewhere in the world, and business people have decided that to try to change this impression. Either in Canada, either we don't have the money or the vision to have a high-speed rail, that we need to show that we're part of these of these economies that have high performance level. And so if people had said that we needed, if elsewhere in the world they were building airports everywhere and we weren't, well, this is now an indicator of a green society, and a society that is providing its citizens high-speed transportation. I'd also like to speak to economic spin-offs. The investments in this type of infrastructure is such that we have to be very attentive. We have to be very attentive to the economic spin-offs for suppliers, and we have to be careful. We have to make sure that these expenditures are in segments of high value-added activity. So it's not linked to maintenance of trains in Canada to justify these spin-offs for the country. We have to go much further in our reflection. The parallel would be with the American will of deploying the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, as being a regulatory tool, a legal tool used to reinforce the American economy. And to go forward with a high-frequency rail project should be a tool in order to strengthen the Canadian economy. I would end by saying that the business world is very skeptical when a public debate is held, and that costs are not given in a transparent fashion. There is, when we talk about $10 billion for a high-frequency rail, these figures were thrown out. $65 billion for a high-speed train. And if we're not careful to what the real costs are, the real cost should be discussed from the beginning. Otherwise, we'll have a problem linked to credibility and social acceptance. And so, thank you.
C'est d'avoir les justes coûts.
So we need to have the correct costs.
Next, we have Ms. Murray and Graham Cox. I'll turn the floor over to both of you for your opening remarks. You have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer Murray, and I am the Atlantic Regional Director at Unifor. Thank you to the committee for allowing us to contribute to your study of the Via Rail High Frequency Rail Project. I come from a family of railway workers. My grandfather, a locomotive engineer with CN. My dad worked at CN. My brother is a Via Rail employee, and I have been a proud employee of Via Rail for 27 years, starting out at the train station in Sackville, New Brunswick, which unfortunately is now closed, along with many other stations across Canada. Unifor represents the incredibly hard workers who have built, maintain, and service Via Rail's infrastructure, including those working face-to-face with traveling public since before it became a Crown corporate company through the privatization of CN Rail and an ordering council, which would have actually been better served as a legislative Via Rail Act. To start, let me say that we are very supportive of investments in passenger rail in Canada. Unifor and our predecessor unions have long advocated for massive investments in higher speed and dedicated intercity passenger rail services. We believe that public passenger rail has always been an obvious and necessary solution to the unique weather and geographic conditions in Canada. However, Unifor is very concerned over the use of public-private partnerships, especially when it comes to transport. No matter how many attempts there are to call these structures modern, they are simply subsidies to commercial interests that end up costing taxpayers more money to get a service rather than doing it in-house. Report after report has shown this, and yet here we are again saying it will be different this time. P3s for operations are a leftover from the previous era of ideological-driven privatization. Decades of failures of this model show that there is no magic to be found and no actual competition resulting in higher quality services because transport like this is a natural monopoly. Unifor has a lot of experience dealing with railway employers, public and private. We know firsthand how tight the grip on these operations need to be, or they extract a huge price. We also know that Canadians were promised and deserve a passenger rail system that is accessible, reliable, and affordable. All that is going to happen here is further fragmentation of the rail system, making it even harder to achieve a common vision for green transportation of the future. This fragmentation of HFR and VIA already shows that the focus of providing service to the entire Canadian public has been undermined. These services cannot be determined in isolation. Quality public transport should not just be between current economic centers. It is about expanding potential of all Canadians, no matter where they live, a comment we have heard from municipal leaders across this country. Interest in commercial investments in one part of the system cannot be allowed to cannibalize needed investments in the rest of the system, a false division created by the plans for partial privatization. Are we really to believe that we do not have the expertise needed to run the corridor, but we do have for the rest of the system? Either the government is saying we don't have any intention to develop the rest of the system, or the excuse for HFR is not valid. The fact that the RFP involves two state-owned European rail companies just shows how ridiculous the notion that we need private sector expertise is. We need the current process as a delay. We see the current process as a delay tactic, as a way to involve more consultants, repeating the studies that have already been done to build something we already know how to build. A delay because it is an expensive project and there is a constant fear of spending big money. Well, you don't build big things without spending big money, and the delay of true investment means now even more spending. Constant delays have already had an impact on the rest of the rail system. Underinvestment in the rest of the passenger rail system relegates much of our intercity passenger rail to enthusiasts, history buffs, and communities of people who rely on Via Rail to get to where they need to be. The lack of proper planning for a functioning public passenger rail system is the cause. Studies and consultations are carried out and then shelved as if the goal were the study itself, as if the ideas will result in someone else building it. But passenger rail systems do not work that way. They are built and supported with public money. They must be regulated and refined constantly to facilitate upgrades. This is a costly endeavor, like all transport systems. In fact, if we look to other countries, including just south of the border, they can be a model of how proper investment in public passenger rail system are done and beneficial. Because they are costly, we must also make sure the wealth created by the building and operating these systems stays right here. Rail is about nation building and economic development, not just of the products and people that roll across those tracks, but building, maintenance, and work done to keep it going. If we continue to privatize these services to companies outside of Canada or anywhere, we forego a significant part of the economic benefits of building rail and further divide our rail systems. Unifor recommends that the government review the HFR structure and take some bold steps in investing in a real public passenger rail system, one the whole nation can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Murray. Next, prochainement, nous avons M. Péloquin et Mme Toporowski. La parole est à vous. 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am pleased to have this opportunity to speak to you on behalf of Via Rail. I am accompanied by my colleague Rita Toporowski, Chief Service Delivery Officer.
The CEO in June. It is an honor to join Via Rail at such an extraordinary time. Passenger rail in Canada started about 200 years ago. It had a very humble beginning. Since then, of course, the industry has progressed in leaps and bounds. Today, people are recognizing train travel's vast potential. It is sustainable, it connects communities, and it benefits both the economy and the planet. Via Rail a été créé en tant que...
Via Rail was created as a Crown corporation in the 1970s. Today, it is an innovative and efficient expert in passenger transportation. We've been connecting Canadians for over 45 years. We believe in putting the customer first and connecting communities across Canada. Our people and corporate culture prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion in everything we do. We are an environmentally responsible mode of transportation, and we continue to innovate to become even better. Our approach promotes sustainability, both strategically and financially, and of course, our focus is always on safety and security. Via Rail is not only an expert in passenger rail transport in Canada, but also an innovative, environmentally responsible company committed to connecting communities. Our services are also often crucial for Indigenous communities, where travel without the train is sometimes very difficult.
We are currently receiving state-of-the-art trains for our corridor operations. These modern, accessible, and even more environmentally friendly trains are bringing Via Rail into the 21st century, putting us on par with passenger rail transporters all over the world. Comme Via Rail ne possède que 3%.
Since Via Rail owns only 3% of the track we use, our trains often have to wait behind freight and commuter trains, which unfortunately makes them chronically late. The result? For example, on the Montreal-Ottawa line, where we have complete control of the tracks, our trains are on time more than 90% of the time, while on the rest of the network, where we run trains on other host railroads, we struggle to achieve 60% punctuality. This is very frustrating for passengers and for Via Rail.
Transport is great for the country's economy, but it's quite literally pushing passenger rail to the siding, as the increase in traffic is easier to handle than the mix of trains of different speeds. With all that in mind, of course, Via Rail will always support better, faster, more efficient passenger rail service to connect more Canadians and give priority to passenger service, and the impact will be dramatic. In fact, the current high-frequency rail project in the Quebec City to Windsor corridor was conceived and planned by Via Rail. Higher speeds and more frequent passenger train service in the Quebec City, Toronto, and the Edmonton, Calgary, Banff regions would be of great benefit, economically and socially, to a larger segment of our population. And that is a vision Via Rail supports and can be a key partner in creating. Tous les Canadiens méritent un service.
All Canadians deserve a modern passenger rail service that's comfortable, efficient, accessible, safe, and environmentally friendly. For Via Rail, this must start with the renewal of Canada's long-distance and regional trains, since the eventual arrival of a new service in the corridor does not affect the fact that we must continue to serve off-corridor routes, including northern regions, and our current rolling stock is very old by any standards.
35 years of experience and expertise should assure you that our team has the skills to support any expansion of HFR and HSR services. We must be a key partner in passenger rail projects across Canada, as we have the most experience in the field of passenger rail transportation over long distances, so that we continue to connect Canadians in every region of the country and offer them the passenger rail service that they deserve. Je vous remercie. Nous allons maintenant.
Thank you. We would be pleased to answer any questions. Thank you, Mr. Péloquin. Now, we have Mr. Jean Lamarche, Mayor of Trois-Rivières. You have the floor. Thank you. And hello, members of the committee. I say this regularly. My city is one of the most beautiful cities, and we have the presence of an airport, of a port, of a train station, and a university. Because of the Canadian government at Trois-Rivières, we will be able to say that we have all these elements. What we need is the high-frequency rail station. Why Trois-Rivières? For me, our city is strategically situated. It's a hub, and it's an attractive location to reach La Mauricie. Also, it is close to major regions, and also, if you look at Manawan, Obidjouan, Waynac, and Odanak, we are close to all these areas, including Quebec City and others, and so we have regional accessibility. Trois-Rivières also leads to an intermodal opportunities. There is Route 55 linking Quebec from the north to the south, but also the 40 that does the same east to west, and we are well positioned in the context of intermodal transportation. So the work that we're doing right now due to also the federal contribution at our airport, allows us to say that with a train, we would be able to quickly reach construction fields in the northern of Quebec. If I look at Shawinigan, Bécancour, and Trois-Rivières, we need to be closer to different headquarters of large businesses that will set up shop. Mr. Leblanc mentioned this earlier, and we need to work we have to look at the commute that our workers need to do to get to Montreal also, but to Trois-Rivières and other regions. Trois-Rivières will play an important role in decarbonization, in reducing greenhouse gases is possible in different ways, but with the rail transport, we will be able to reach the goals that we've set, and we will be able to demonstrate this. So finally, there are also many issues with Trois-Rivières, and we want to know as quickly as possible where the train station will be set up, whether it be central, or we would be prepared to collaborate and to provide any information required. We're talking about high-frequency rail. People are asking, what does this mean? What is the speed? And of course, communication and information knowledge transfer is essential. And I'm convinced that this is socially acceptable. And so Via Rail, I'm sure, will lead to these high-frequency rail, whether it be independent rail lines for freight, to ensure the good functioning to this, and also will contribute to the growth of our city. Right now, we have a lot of freight going through the port of Trois-Rivières. So this project is a huge project. As we know, it's the largest infrastructure project in Canada. And for Trois-Rivières, we are standard bearers for the regional vision of this project. And that is why I would like to thank you. I would like to offer all my cooperation, and I'd be pleased to answer your questions. Thank you.
Monsieur Lemaire. We'll begin our line of questioning today with Dr. Lewis. Dr. Lewis, I'll turn the floor over to you. You have 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, and thank the witnesses for coming today. This is a very, very important initiative, and we're looking forward to your testimony on this matter. So when it comes to building public transit, there have been a number of high-profile failures, and in Toronto, there's been much delay in the Eglinton Crossroads LRT, and in Ottawa, we've seen ongoing problems with the light rail system from the beginning. What steps do you think that the government needs to take to ensure that the HFR VIA project does not fall behind schedule, and that it doesn't go over budget, or that it is simply an unreliable project? What steps does the government need to take to make sure that we're not seeing that? Perhaps Mr. Peliquin could answer that question.
Thank you for the question. There was an order of council in March 2022 that created a new subsidiary called Via HFR. And it's to be run at arm's length from Via Rail Canada. For obvious reasons, they'll focus on the new project while we focus on continuing to transport Canadians from coast to coast to coast. And as such, the approach and the method to ensure on-time performance and on-budget performance will rest solely with the Via HFR organization.
Now, I think you gave some evidence about the delays that are experienced, and in imposing a new project on similar, it will be the same lines, correct, that it will be running on?
Thank you for the...
At the different speeds, correct?
Yeah, thank you for the clarification question. From my understanding, keeping in mind that Via HFR is going to run the analysis and the decisions on alignment and how it's going to be run, my understanding at this point is that there would be a dual service, one where the Via train, the corridor, would continue operating, and at the same time, a new alignment or a new service that would be called the Via HFR service that could be independent from the existing tracks today or supplementary. But again, that question is better posed to the Via HFR team.
Okay. So you don't have any information about what kinds of changes would be needed to be made in order to make to create some compatibility in the systems and the impact that it will have on the types of services that are delivered by your organization?
Thank you for the question. Look, we're experts in passenger rail service in Canada. We understand the complexities of operating passenger rails on freight tracks and commuter lines, right? That's what we do across the country. As such, we do know certain aspects of what could be done in order to increase our on-time performance, which I believe is the question is going towards. However, we don't own the infrastructure, so we have very few levers that we can use in order to change the infrastructure and so on.
My next question is for Mr. D'Angelo. I'm curious about the delays, and we know that the HFR project was scheduled to close. It's scheduled for 2030, and that's more than 10 years, well, almost 10 years from now, and which is more than 20 years from the original date that it was scheduled to close. How realistic is this 2030 timeline?
Well, I mean, we can look to the cost of inaction and delaying, and so we're really excited that HFR has gotten as far as it has, and where it goes next, we think can be done in an affordable, responsible way, as the HFR CEO talked about when he presented last time. But I'm also happy to report across Canada that while there's many challenges facing urban rail projects in the city of Edmonton, the Valley Line Southwest was just opened over the weekend, and that was fantastic. The REM project is continuing its construction while it has open revenue service from Gare Centrale de Brossard. And of course, very excited about reading in the throne speech in Alberta, Premier Smith's commitment to exploring a Banff to Calgary link to the airport, but also looking ahead to Calgary, Red Deer, and Edmonton. So there's governments across Canada that are putting best practices together to make sure that we build a rail future for Canadian travelers.
I've had experience with one project. It was a public-private partnership that basically shut down because of inflationary projections, and they did not project for inflation. Do you see any risk of that in this project?
Well, I don't have the exact project that you're thinking of. But
Fortis, it was the name. It was, yeah, it was.
In the transit space, I mean, the
transit.
city of Edmonton utilized a P3 model to open the Valley Line, similar to what was done with Vancouver's Canada Line before the Olympics, and also in the region of Waterloo, delivering transit across Kitchener, and that's being done through different P3 models. So there are ways that they can work to add value, but also to deliver transit to Canadians when they need it most, which is yesterday or as soon as possible, as we can reach them so they can connect around their community.
Is it normal to have cost benefit or cost analysis that have inflationary projections included in the project, so that we're not faced with wasting taxpayer dollars when people are going to food banks and don't have enough food to eat?
15-second response,
Indeed,
please.
very briefly, if you take a look at the Ontario budget for this past year, the Ontario government was reserving over the next decade, previously to the budget, it's about $70 billion, and for inflation, that number was changed to about $77 billion over the decade.
Thank you.
Cognizant of inflation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. D'Angelo, and thank you, Dr. Lewis. Next, we have Ms. Koutrakis. Ms. Koutrakis, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to all our witnesses for being here this afternoon with us. Your testimony is very much appreciated, and your expertise. Ma première question, c'est pour...
My first question is for Mr. Leblanc and for Mayor Lamarche. The Quebec-Toronto corridor is 850 kilometers long with 12 million people. And this includes the two largest metropolitan zones of Canada, two provincial capitals, and the national capital, as well as several smaller cities. Professor Richard Florida from the University of Toronto wrote in detail that these types of projects essentially create a super metropolis that's more competitive because there are 4 metropolitan zones, and also include some centers such as Trois-Rivières and makes transportation much more efficient than everything that we have now for work, education, business, tourism, or visiting family and friends. Do you agree with this opinion? I will go first. Yes, we agree with Richard Florida. We know his opinion. And clearly, from the point of view of a metropolis such as Montreal, there are links that are fluid with Toronto, with Trois-Rivières, and Quebec as well. There is a high-frequency train. If it's very rapid, I believe that we should have a high-speed train. This will allow this integration of talent, this integration of business projects, and we believe that we'll be able to measure a notable effect on the Canadian GDP. And this is why, without any ambiguity, we support the project. Thank you. Yes, thank you. I agree. And the reason why is because, and I tried to lay this out in my presentation, it's more than just Trois-Rivières. It's the entire region that will be brought together, whether we're talking about Montreal, Toronto, Quebec, and to proceed in this way, it will have social, economic, and environmental impacts.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. And given that I'm the new parliamentary secretary for the Minister of Tourism, and interested in economic development for Quebec, I have a question. We want to double the contribution of tourism to the GDP in Canada between now and 2023. But to do this, how can we ensure that tourists, whether they be domestic or international, can easily reach their destination? The construction of a high-frequency train will it contribute to the growth of the tourism sector by allowing visitors to easily reach their destinations in 4 large cities of Canada and many other smaller centers? And how, Mr. Péloquin, how can Via Rail contribute to the growth in the tourism sector? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Given that this is a distinct entity that will operate, analyze, decide on the eventual project, at Via Rail, we will cooperate fully with them, but we are not the people who will decide on the service that will be offered. I can say, though, that it is logical that a more rapid and more frequent service will help the tourism sector. One of the things that tourists like to do is to easily reach their destination.
Mr. D'Angelo, as we've heard here today, reliability is a big plus of HFR and even high-speed rail. Because they operate on dedicated passenger track, Via operates on some of its own track and mostly on host railways like CN. Very roughly, what is the difference in reliability and on-time performance between the two? And can a passenger railway be truly successful on other people's tracks competing with their trains? I'd like to hear your opinion, and perhaps Mr. Péloquin can weigh in.
Well, briefly then, certainly having your own right-of-way facilitates travel, reduces travel time because you don't encounter large freight trains. The rails that are owned by CN or CP have a radio center that's owned by those freight companies, and so they're managing their own traffic, and so we want passengers to come first, and that's what clients expect in their modes of travel, whether it's by car, plane, or other modes, that people come before goods, and that can only really happen with dedicated rights of way. And there's good examples of that even in Florida with travel times on the Bright Line between Orlando and Miami. So really having a dedicated right of way is quite helpful.
Mr. Pelican?
Merci pour la question. Bien sûr,
Thank you for the question. The issue with the increase of frequency of freight rail in Canada is very good for the Canadian economy, and so the business case is stronger. This creates a more return on investment for Canada, and freight trains normally operate at the same speed, and so it's easier to add an extra train because it's like a domino effect. They're moving at the same speed, so it's quite easy. When we start to insert trains with a different speed, such as a Via Rail train, and still in miles per hour, but let's say 40 miles per hour, more quick than a freight train, it's more difficult to coordinate this, and this is why it's complicated. So a designated rail.
Merci, merci, Madame Koutrakis.
Thank you, and thank you, Mrs. Koutrakis. Mr. Barcelo Duval, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. Thank you for being here today. I don't have a lot of time, and there's a large number of witnesses, so I'm sorry if I don't have the opportunity to ask questions to everyone. I'll begin with Mr. Leblanc from the Montreal Chamber of Commerce. I liked your statement earlier. You spoke about priorities. You seem to have consulted with your members. You talked about speed, reliability, and the issue of frequency. In the public sphere, when we talk about high-speed train and a high-frequency train, we oftentimes hear or wonder what will make people abandon their cars for rail. And so right now, a lot of people are talking about the time it takes for the trip. The figures that are public and the estimates, we're talking about 2 hours and 50 minutes for a high-frequency trip. So what do you think, Mr. Leblanc? According to what your members are saying, do you think 2 hours and 50 minutes is enough time to allow for this shift from the plane or the car to the train? Thank you for the question. I imagine that when you start talking about this is Montreal to Quebec? Yes. Yeah, okay. So this is not fast enough. And this is why I am saying when we're talking about a high-frequency train, in the business world, this is not the vision of what we want. When you talk about the shift to rail, people who are driving or who are taking the plane. So the speed is a central issue. And I would say the speed from downtown to downtown. In the case of Montreal, as in other cities, when we think about these high-frequency trains but high-speed rails, the access towards the city will require work and maybe expropriation, but it's going to require work. And I invite you to look at the time from one downtown to the other. Thank you. Thank you, because this is where I wanted to bring you for my next question, downtown to downtown. We hear that there might be a connection at the northern part of the island of Montreal. That concerns me because I don't see a tourist arrive in Montreal North or someone from the business world and then have to take the entire Orange Line before reaching their appointment downtown. And you're saying there might be another opportunity. So maybe you could define what is downtown for you? Because sometimes people say, oh, yes, there's going to be a downtown connection. But what does downtown mean to you? Because it seems to me that downtown is not the entire island of Montreal. It's more targeted than that, right? So it's the time from downtown to downtown. So there can be a scenario where you would say we have to take another tunnel. There's only one tunnel. Or the second option would be to have an intermodal station that connects with the REM in the northern part of Mont-Royal. And so we have examples of this in Europe. In Paris, there are many stations, and there are cities where there's different stations, and people can move about very efficiently. So it's not to see if the station itself is downtown, but can someone downtown who wants to use the high-speed train, how long does it take to get there and eventually use it? Yes, that's a very good point. So for you, the priority is the time from one downtown to the other. For example, we could say that Montreal to Quebec is very short, but if you cannot connect the downtowns, it's not so short. So the idea is to connect them in terms of time, even if there's a connector at some point. You spoke about the spin-offs. This is of interest to me. Right now, it doesn't seem to have been a priority that was set out in the government project. I'd like to know from your point of view, how do we integrate this issue of having economic spin-offs for businesses, all the while respecting international agreements? Well, we see this in the U.S. There is a very clear will through the IRA to make sure that the American economy will benefit from hundreds of billions that will be spent. The Americans found solutions. We can be inspired by what they're doing. We can make sure that the builders, whether they're engineering firms, equipment providers, that they are committed to invest in Canada, and that the Canadian investment will be the same. As there's ways to proceed. It's a very long discussion, but we have to succeed in having spin-offs here locally. So if I understand you, we need political will to get there. My last point has to do with transparency with regards to costs. I did a little bit of research, and recently there's a 955-kilometer project in Spain. It cost $12.5 billion euros rather. In Canadian dollars, 18.3 billion. So $19 billion. So in the case of Canada, the federal government right now, or their group, they're talking about a total cost of $65 billion. We're talking about $75 million. How can we make it credible that the cost would be 3 or 4 times higher than what was done elsewhere? Is there any way to have reliable data given the international comparisons? We're out of time, and you have to wait for the next turn to have an answer.
I'll turn the floor over to you. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all of our witnesses for joining us. Mr. Péloquin, congratulations on your new role. I think you mentioned in your intro remarks that it's an honor to join Via Rail at such an extraordinary time, and the word extraordinary can have many meanings. I would offer that to many people it feels like a time of great uncertainty. And I know that you can't speak directly to many aspects of HFR because there is now a separate Crown entity that is spearheading that project. So I wanted to direct my questions this evening to the rest of Via Rail service and preface it by saying just how much I appreciate the legacy of Via Rail and the service that your employees provide. I was on the train yesterday to visit my daughter, and interacting with your staff. They always do a very good job. They're skilled professionals, and their work is deeply appreciated. Now, the riding I represent shares its name with one of the most beautiful train trips in North America, and that is the Skeena between Jasper and Prince Rupert. Now, unfortunately, that rail line, which used to serve, or that rail route, which used to serve as a viable transportation service between communities, has really been reduced to a tourist amenity because of the lack of dependability and reliability of the schedule. And so recently in the news, you were quoted as talking about the need for putting rules in place to prioritize passenger rail trains. And I share that desire because I think if we can increase the consistency and the reliability, more people are going to use the service. Is this something that you would like to see the present government bring forward legislation to achieve?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Look, to address a few of those points, first, we're very proud of the people that work for Via Rail on board trains, driving the trains, of course, and maintaining those trains. Without their heroic efforts every day, we wouldn't be able to run the trains that we run today. I'm a fourth generation railroader from both sides, so I've seen the birth of Via Rail from its humble beginnings to what it is today. Via has gone, from providing the same services that it was providing on both freight railroads at a time to the kind of service that we can provide today. And that is due to a few complexities operating on freight railways when there's no priorities. Passenger trains used to be classified as Class 1 trains, and that's gone away with privatization, changing in the rules and the operating methods and so on. Also, the increase in freight traffic makes it, like I explained before, difficult to inject more passenger trains, and also trying to get access to those freight tracks. So it's a very complex mix of issues that we have to deal with. When there's reduction in several lines, the Skeena line being one of them, as you point out, it's proves very difficult to restart the service. We need to have the proper rolling stock to run that service. We need to have enough staff, and we need to get the permission of the host railways to operate those trains.
At one of our previous meetings, we had a presentation by Terrence Johnson from Transport Action Canada, and I'll just read you part of his testimony. He said, "If the rest of Via Rail continues to operate as a public service, it needs a very much larger subsidy to provide all the core services that are currently shared with the corridor. That, I think, would be something that we feel wouldn't actually happen at all, and you would in fact see trains like the Skeena just disappear." So he's speaking to the fact that if we privatize the corridor, if the government privatizes the corridor, it's going to rob Via Rail of the bulk of its revenue. And the subsidy to maintain the remainder of your service across Canada is going to have to be much greater as a percentage because the rest of Canada doesn't have very high ridership. And the fear is that we're going to lose those rural routes altogether in other parts of Canada, including the place that I'm so proud to represent. Is this a valid concern?
Thank you for the question. Look, my vision for Via Rail is to continue to provide and hopefully increase an affordable, accessible, environmentally friendly, sustainable, and diverse service across Canada. The fact that the corridor is going to look different than it does today doesn't impact what my vision for Via Rail is. It's to continue or enhance the service in all the regions that we serve now. Let's not forget that some of those regions are not only long distances, but they're also remote, where accessibility to transportation is very challenging without the train.
Very briefly, are there other jurisdictions that have rules in place that prioritize passenger traffic over freight? And if so, where?
Thank you for the question. Well, if we just look south of the border to our neighbors, they do have rules in place that prioritize passenger trains over freight trains.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach. Next, we have Mr. Strahl. Mr. Strahl, I'll turn the floor over to you. You have 6 minutes, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I would just like at the beginning of my time to give notice of a motion. And the motion is as follows, that the committee undertake a 5-meeting review of the impact of the carbon tax on the transportation sector and the increased costs it places on Canadians, that the Minister of Transport appear on this matter, and that the committee find the additional resources necessary to accommodate these meetings. So just giving verbal notice of that, we'll get the written notice into the clerk as soon as possible. Moving on now to my questions. I asked the HFR, the Via HFR folks, what their proposed or what they envisioned that the per passenger subsidy would be to operate the Toronto to Quebec City service, and they said they hadn't gotten that far down the process. But to Mr. Pelican, can you confirm what the current per passenger subsidy is on average for a passenger traveling from Toronto to Quebec City?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. The subsidy levels for operating Via Rail is quite complex because we operate a real mix of services on different routes. So it is a complex issue, and we can certainly look at our annual reports and provide that information.
Okay, I appreciate you getting that information back to the clerk to be distributed to all members. What impact do you think the new HFR rail will have on your passenger levels, and therefore what impact do you think that there will be a higher per passenger subsidy required if you are losing passengers to this other service that is competing alongside of it, literally?
Thank you for the follow-up question. Look, I believe that the HFR arrival will not really change the way that we operate the long distance and regional parts of the railway, and therefore I can't predict that there's going to be much of an impact on the level of subsidies because the way that we operate today at Via Rail is we financially look at all of those by line, by separate lines, the corridor being one, but even in the corridor it's sub-segmented. And also we have the numbers for the various lines. So if we continue operating the service the way we're operating it today, for example, between Toronto and Vancouver, I don't see why there would be a difference in the level of subsidies, other than I talked about sustainability a few times, and we continuously look at ways to improve the way that we use public money so we control our costs better and better every year, and we try to generate as much revenue as possible.
Okay, I want to concentrate more on the Toronto to Quebec City. Toronto-Vancouver is a whole different story. What is the current schedule in an ideal world? What does your schedule say if a consumer goes onto the Via website and says, I want to travel from Toronto to Quebec City? What is the time that what is the scheduled time for that in an ideal world?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I would like to refer that question to my Chief Service Delivery Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Pelican. Traveling from Toronto to Quebec City would require a connection in Montreal. Toronto to Montreal takes about 5 hours, requiring a connection time depending on when the next departure is going. And then from Montreal to Quebec City is another additional 3 hours. You're talking minimum 8 plus the connection, probably closer to 9. But it really is dependent on time of day and at the number of frequencies we have at that particular point in time that make it easy to connect.
Okay, so at 9 hours, and what is the real time? Like what is the average passenger? How long does it take currently to go from Toronto to Quebec City? We talked about, some of the segments you're very close to on time. Others you're in sidings waiting for freight trains. But do you have that information as to what the current average time elapsed for a trip from Toronto to Quebec City would be?
Thank you for that follow-up question. I don't have something offhand I can offer you in terms of what that would look like right now. We do have delays. What I can say, though, from an OTP perspective is that within the corridor that we currently run on CN, we're running at about 60% on-time performance. On the 3% of the trackage that we actually own, we run at 90% on-time performance. Right. So there's quite a disparity.
Right. I understand that. So, but if you could again get that information and submit it to the committee, I think it's important that we compare kind of current service levels with future service levels and determine, whether the cost of the proposal is worth the time savings, et cetera. So that would be good. How much time do I have, Mr. Chair?
23 seconds, Mr. Strahl.
23, 21. Okay. Well, I will come back for my next round, but thank the witnesses for their answers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Strahl. Next, I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers, the floor is yours. You have 6 minutes, sir. 5 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And appreciate the opportunity to put some questions to our witnesses, and welcome, and good to have you here. First question, Mr. Pelican, I think you mentioned 200 years for Via Rail. I've been in the railway business. Of course, historically, trains and railways have played a huge role in building Canada, especially with the movement of goods and people. So can you share with this committee how investing in high-frequency rail would benefit Canadians?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Look, as you rightly pointed, railroading in Canada was country building, right? It helped link the West to central Canada, what we call central Canada today. And there's been economic development from those days in the late 1800s when the transcontinental was built. The arrival of an eventual high-frequency rail will do very much the same thing. Very different because we're not going to move goods and people. We'll focus on people. And we can look at countries all over the world, but France, for example, the arrival of TGV has actually shrunk the country. There's a map that exists where you see, because of the travel times, now people can commute from cities where it was impossible in the past, and so on. And that is the kind of effect that a high-frequency rail will do in Canada.
Mr. D'Angelo, you were also making some commentary around that, so you want to jump in there as well?
With respect to building rail and building. Okay, thank you.
Would be would benefit Canadians overall.
Yeah, certainly, we've been supportive of connecting communities by rail, whether it's been Via Rail doing so with its plans in the corridor, whether it's been Metrolinx helping to connect cities that are across the greater Toronto area, the greater Golden Horseshoe, bringing people to Niagara seasonally to enjoy tourism, just to come back to the tourism question. The opening of innovative projects like the Union Pearson Express that help to bring people from Pearson Airport to enjoy downtown Toronto. And of course, rail projects that are helping to connect communities around the country, the expansion of the REM, the continuing build out of the Ottawa LRT, plans for other rail projects as well in Mississauga and in Brampton, the potential for projects in Hamilton and in Quebec City, which is advanced a bit, even talking about it in Gatineau. So really across Canada, cities and leaders are turning to urban rail as an effective solution at moving groups of people around.
And of course, you mentioned at the beginning 20 million people in the region and growing by another 5 million well into the future. But so we see the need obviously for that. Mr. Pelican, Via Rail estimates that by offsetting more car trips, HFR would reduce 10.3 to 13.9 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions over the project's 30-year life cycle. Can you explain to this committee how you came about these findings and how you plan to reduce emissions?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I can't really speak to the numbers that the VIA HFR team has analyzed and developed, but at a high level, I can say that a train is much more carbon efficient or carbon emissions efficient than an airplane or the 250 cars approximately that you would need to travel the same distance. So there's a real benefit, green benefit to operating a train as opposed to all the other transportation modes over long distances.
Okay. Mr. D'Angelo, did you want to comment on that as well?
Yes, I think that what's clear is you've got a congested area between Quebec City and Windsor, and we know that Canadians and travelers want to take advantage of getting between those cities for work, for meetings, for tourism. And you've seen the number of flights grow by Porter Airlines expanding the number of services they offer now, flying out of Pearson. You see the congestion on our roads, the opening of additional highways to better connect to get out of the Greater Toronto Area to move eastward through 407 East and to other road expansion projects. So the hunger and the need is out there, and what rail can provide is a productivity opportunity to keep working during those times, to stay in contact with their families through by being on land, and be able to use Wi-Fi effectively on board and other amenities. So really, there's a number of great arguments for the need to connect people.
Thank you very much, Mr. D'Angelo, and thank you, Mr. Rogers. Prochainement, nous avons Mr. Barcel-Duval. À vous la parole.
Monsieur Barcel-Duval, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to give the opportunity to Mr. Leblanc to answer the last question that I asked, if he remembers. I'll try. I don't remember. That's okay. My question had to do with the cost difference. If we compare to similar trains elsewhere in the world, the costs seem to be three or four times higher. Yes, I asked the same question to several specialists, and it seems that the complexity in Canada is increased because we don't have a long history in building this. Also, expropriation costs in Canada are very high compared to Europe when we're talking about high-speed trains. And also, these costs are higher to enter into the cities. And I would like to say that, and this was my last point, I think that it's possible to do all the groundwork on the costs of these projects and to have a true public debate based on real costs. And we don't have it right now. Thank you, because we find that it's quite difficult. We would like to know what is the real difference. We don't have data, we have rumors, and it's hard to make decisions based on rumors. Mr. Lamarche, I'd like to hear you speak on your role. I know at Trois-Rivières is quite a central city, if we look at Montreal, Quebec, Trois-Rivières, for the train. What is your role in the project? Were you consulted? Do you have any idea where the train will pass? Is there a connection with the downtown? What is your participation as mayor of Trois-Rivières? How are they communicating with you? Well, as a mayor, first of all, we have our planning teams, our engineer teams, and we looked at the different opportunities. We do have a station that is the property of Trois-Rivières, and that is close to downtown. And that station right now will be available if there's a need. Now, I will tell you, and I have the intention to go forward with the best possible option if ever there's a project for a station that, well, I'm talking about the east side of the, it's on the east, but if I'm propose something on the west, I'll hear it. It depends. We have a lot of will. Now, the role of the city of Trois-Rivières, I'm not know if you wanted me to speak on that, but the role of Trois-Rivières is also to promote, or at least to maintain this, to make sure that this project remains alive. We had an announcement with Mr. Alghabra, and I'm going to continue my work. Thank you.
So we have Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Bachrach, the floor is yours. You have 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for Mr. D'Angelo from the Canadian Urban Transit Association. I believe I heard you use the phrase people before goods, and this very much reflects the line of questioning that I was presenting to Mr. Pelican. And I wonder if CUDA would support legislation or regulations in Canada that would codify that principle of passengers before freight on our rail network.
Yeah, indeed, I think that's something that would take further study. On its face, it sounds that that would be very helpful. I mean, just look at the example of just at the end, about a month ago, where CN, who manages the rail corridor around Union Station, lost some internet connectivity, and as a result, systems like Metrolinx were not able to deliver along the Lakeshore line for a few hours and left past passengers stranded or waiting. Even if, in the example of Via, even southwest of that, as far as London, there was impacts just based on that. So I think there is room for regulation in that area.
Thank you very much. And then briefly to Ms. Murray. Ms. Murray, your testimony reflects very closely our deep concerns with the way that HFR has turned out in terms of the government's conceptualization of it and the privatization model. You spoke very briefly about examples from other jurisdictions where there is good public high-speed rail that could inform Canada's approach. Could you elaborate a little bit on examples around the world of where high-speed or high-frequency rail has been built using public procurement?
Thank you for that. Certainly we can. We're prepared for that. I'm going to pass the floor over to Graham Cox, please.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, we've got, we can certainly pull up a list of other countries that invest in public passenger rail. I think that the two of the examples in the consortia are good examples of procurement through public passenger rail, since they're state-owned companies in Spain and in Germany. But certainly there's other jurisdictions like the United States that invest in public passenger rail quite effectively.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bachrach, and thank you, Mr. Cox. Next, we'll go back to Mr. Strahl. Mr. Strahl, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I heard this, and no one's malicious when they're saying this. We heard it in the first the meetings we had prior to another study that we've undertaken. But talking about this benefiting all Canadians and being a nation-building project and things like that, I think we do have to keep in mind that if 25 or 20 million people can access it, there's 20 million that can't, and people in my riding would have to take a 4-day train trip to be able to access the front end of this project in order to benefit from it. So it is an important regional project. It connects to 2 provinces and several major urban centers, but I think we do have to be a little aware that this isn't the Canadian Pacific Railway connecting the countries and bringing us together at Confederation. This is a very regional project that will benefit a significant portion of the population, but not the entire country. And I do, in that vein, I want to talk a bit about the Toronto to Quebec City corridor is perhaps the most well-served corridor in terms of transportation options in the country. I think Mr. D'Angelo mentioned increased commuter air traffic, Porter, Air Canada, WestJet. The list goes on of air opportunities. People drive all the time. There's the current Via Rail line. So I guess the question that I have to the Via folks specifically is this the best use of funding to spend billions of dollars to give yet another option to the same region? Or could that funding be better spent improving service on your main line, improving your stock, improving your ability to provide service to already existing rail line? I'd like your comment on that.
Merci pour la question, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you for the question. The vision that I have for Via Rail is to provide reliable service that is good for the Canadian economy, good for the environment, and diverse service. All of this to say that one does not exclude the other. The more services that we're able to provide throughout Canada for the population, the entire population, means it will be a better service. Is one better than the other? I can't really say, because I think that serving more people is better for all Canadians.
Question is for Mr. LeBlanc. You mentioned in your comments a caution that it's dangerous when costs are not given in a transparent fashion. And we saw this with the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which the federal government, the Liberals, bought for $5 or $6 billion. It was going to take $6 billion to build the project. We're now approaching $40 billion to build it. And when I asked questions of the Via HFR folks, they couldn't give me any number anymore. They've stopped talking about numbers at all when we're talking about building this project. So how can the government build confidence in that they're going to be able to build this in a responsible manner when they're not even giving any numbers anymore when they talk about the costs, which will be enormous?
Merci pour la question. Clairement, je ne commenterai pas.
Thank you. I won't comment on other projects, but I can say that on this particular project, the figures vary. And when we look at two different options within the same project, so a high-frequency train and a high-speed train, we need to understand fully what are the financial impacts, because this will also have an impact on use. What we said, 9 hours between Toronto and Quebec, no one wants to do that other than a tourist that wants to admire the view. So if we're serious, if we want to do a modal shift, we need to talk about the correct solutions. We need the real costs. These real costs have to be accompanied with hypotheses linked to inflation, funding, complexities in the field, so that afterwards we can make the best decision. The cost will be high. We agree on that, but we have to be able to know what will be the scope of it to take the right decision.
Thank you beaucoup, Mr. Leblanc, and thank you, Mr. Strahl. Next, we'll go to Mr. Badaway. Mr. Badaway, the floor is yours. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, I'm going to park the politics here and get down to the business of what we're trying to do here. And I disagree with Mr. Strahl when he stated the fact that this wouldn't galvanize the country like it did many years ago when we built the rail network. I believe, quite frankly, that if we would have had an expanded vision back then when the railways were built and the St. Lawrence Seaway was built and other transportation-related infrastructure was built, that, in fact, the country would be a lot further today because of those investments. Let's get to that. When we look at trying to galvanize the country, bringing communities together, destinations closer together, it will offer more opportunities to travel and expand domestic travel to both desired locations and more diverse locations, places that we sometimes might not go to, but we have access to now because of this new network. As well as it would give international visitors the opportunity to travel to destinations not only, as I said earlier, easy to get to, especially by air. For example, it will complement the Great Lakes shipping industry, or Great Lakes tours and the Great Lakes cruises that are happening now with rail, getting an multimodal network. It'll strengthen the multimodal movement of people, including local transit. It will act somewhat as a spine with arterials, again, utilizing other methods of transportation as well as local transit, bringing people directly to their destinations. The more inter and multimodal, the more capacity. So I guess my question to you, Mr. Peliquin, and I want to ask Mayor LaMarche the same question, is what's your thoughts on those thoughts that I just brought forward in terms of the capacity building, the business side of it, and galvanizing communities across the nation?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Look, I talked a couple of times about my vision for Via Rail, right? And when I'm talking about sustainable, doing more, I mean that in a way that it's all-inclusive. So complete mobility is something that is very near and dear to my heart. Bringing a person to a station where they cannot go anywhere from easily after that is not complete mobility. We have examples of that across Canada where I'm happy to discuss with CUDA and also municipal transit agencies to see how we can improve the mobility, the first mile, last mile, but going from a station to a university or a school. Very important for us. Offering more services to more locations is also part of the vision, because when you look at the train, at the end of the day, right, it is the most accessible mode of transport, the most environmentally friendly, and the best for the Canadian economy.
Thank you. Mayor LaMarche, I tell you, I love Charlevoix. It's a gorgeous area, and one of the things I admire about your community is that you had and have and continue to have the ability to really multi-land use. Everything comes together. You have industrial, light industrial, you have tourism, you have residential, you have commercial, you have retail, all coexisting in one area. And it's absolutely gorgeous. So with that, what will this do for your community in terms of bringing people in to you, but also within the entire region?
Ben, écoutez, dans un premier temps, moi, je
First of all, if you'll allow me, this will allow us to support growth. Right now, we have reached our peak level for economic growth, and as was said earlier, the presence of railway will allow us to reach a certain demographic, and so this will also allow us to serve, or well, to act as a hub for other regions that are around Trois-Rivières and that I spoke of. So we are in the middle of Quebec, and so this also adds a regional dimension that is extremely important to the project. Of course, for Trois-Rivières, I will always say that it's the most beautiful city in the world, but to bring tourists to see our city, it's important, and also so that people can take the rail system and see all the talent at the university for R&D or with regards to renewable technologies. We are well positioned, and so yes, you're correct. Trois-Rivières can, and the train will be able to serve.
Back to Mr. Pelequin. Do you feel as well this is not just a domestic investment, it's a binational investment? So to link, for example, Windsor, Niagara, GTA into New York, and so on and so forth. So do you feel that, with that said, both the capital investments that we make in the infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure, as well as the levels of service, the operating side, do you think it should inevitably lead into a binational discussion as well, especially for those networks? That's question number one. Last question, high speed, high frequency. Is it either or can it be both?
Brief response, please, sir.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We are in discussions all the time with our colleagues at Amtrak. They have a desire to offer more services across the border. So the first answer to your first question is absolutely. Second question, more service to more Canadians, high speed or high frequency, is an advantage to Canada.
Thank you very much, Mr. Badaway, and merci beaucoup, Mr. Pelequin.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Mr. Lewis. Mr. Lewis, turn the floor over to you. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to all the witnesses this afternoon. My first question, I don't really know who to direct it to, so I suppose I'll pick on you, Mr. D'Angelo. But that's only because I think you might have the answer. The first question I have is, I believe in your opening testimony, you had mentioned Quebec to Toronto, which of course my ears perked up because Essex next to Windsor. And now there's a lot of discussion about the Windsor corridor, which I'd be crazy not to be excited about that. And I like the way Mr. Badaway, he spoke about making it binational. We've got Detroit sitting right there. I don't know, just one of the craziest international border crossings in North America. So my question for you is, and I guess I'm a bit confused, because I believe it to be true there's a final report coming out promised by the minister by the end of 2023, the then Minister Agbra. Are you aware of that final report?
Well, let me address the Windsor component that you raised, and thanks for doing that. And it's a very important part of the corridor. We know with the amount of truck traffic that there is on the 401, we know about the times of the year that are inclement between especially London and Windsor, that people need a safe way to get from Windsor to Toronto, and with London in between. We know that there's so many people that are choosing to drive from Windsor to the Detroit airport to take a flight to Montreal. And these are things that don't make sense.
I very much appreciate it. So, are you aware of the report?
Not the specific report.
Okay. Have you been asked to be part of any roundtables with the ministry?
Not in this calendar year. So
Through you, Mr. Chair, to any of the witnesses, have any of the witnesses been asked to be part of a ministerial roundtable? With all due respect, Mr. Chair, I don't see any hands up. So I understand to be very true that a ministerial roundtable was promised in early 2023. Well, we're in November, so I think we've got a problem here. Mr. Chair, you know, I also find it interesting that some of my esteemed colleagues around here are speaking about, you know, putting the people before the goods, and I agree, except for we have this other small problem, this thing called grain, of which 92% in southwestern Ontario is exported overseas. So this isn't the question shouldn't be about high frequency and those type of things. It should be about, if we're going to make an investment, do we double it so we can actually get our exports out of the country? Because we see what just happened with the St. Lawrence Seaway. Thank goodness that got resolved. And I spoke to the canola farmers at the Billy Bishop Airport this morning, and they're not quite so sure that we're going to get rid of all of our grain. So I think there's a lot more discussion that needs to be had around this, Mr. Chair. And I guess I'll just leave it with one more thought. So this morning I left Windsor Airport. I flew Porter. One of the folks here spoke about Porter. I flew Porter and they were fantastic. Flew through Billy Bishop Airport, left at 7 a.m. and I was in my apartment here in Ottawa at 10:57. How long would it take me on a train? Under the new model, if you would, please, Ms. Toporski. Thank you, Chair.
The question, under the new model, once again, I would have to see what the model is that's being determined and
Today, what would it look like today? So the reason I'm asking the question is we're thinking it might be a $10 billion investment. We can't come in for a landing on that. I'm just trying to figure out what's the return on the investment.
Our current schedule right now is about 4.5 hours from Toronto to Ottawa, downtown to downtown.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Next, prochainement, nous avons M. Iacchino. À vous la parole. 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. And I'd also like to say that I'm going to share my time with you, dear colleague. So here's my first question for Mr. Péloquin. Do you think that the creation of a passenger rail line that's quick and rapid would increase traffic by reducing public grants for rail travel, by encouraging the economic growth of businesses, of local businesses? Thank you for the question. As I was saying earlier, all increase in service will help the economy and ridership. And studies are done everywhere that shows that when a good service is provided, and so that people can be transported reliably, and that ridership increases a lot. And so the answer to your question is yes. Mr. D'Angelo, what are the challenges that you might share with us with regards to high-frequency rail? I think that it's an interesting question, but it's also important to note that the objective is to link a number of communities to maximize how many people are able to use the train. So we want the railway to be practical and accessible to the greatest number of people. Thank you, Mr. Péloquin. Our government recognizes that climate change is real and that we need to do everything in our power to reduce emissions. A high-frequency rail line, would this help us to reach the targets and objectives for the environment? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I have to say that a train that operates efficiently is much greener than all other methods of transportation between city centers. So the answer is yes, it does help the environment as long as people are actually using the train. Thank you. The rest of the time will be from my colleague, Mr. Shifke.
For ceding some of his time to me today. It's rare that I get the opportunity to ask a question. We had the New Crown Corporation here to discuss the high-frequency rail project. They had provided testimony to say that no decision has been made as to whether or not it will be high frequency or some kind of merger between high frequency and high speed. One of the arguments or responses that we frequently hear is that Canada has a climate that is not favorable, particularly in the east, to have a high speed rail model. Given the expertise that we have with you, Mr. Péloquin, and you, Mr. D'Angelo, what would you say to somebody who says Canada cannot have a high speed rail here? And if you are in favor, or the response would be that we can have one, do you have models perhaps that you are aware of around the world, given your expertise and your history in transport, rail transport? Do you have any models you can share with the committee that you think would work well, that you've seen around the world?
Thank you for the question, Mr. President, Mr. Chair. Sorry. Look, Canada is a great country, but we also have some of the harshest climate anywhere in the world as far as operating trains. Higher speed, even the speeds that we're going at today. There are a lot of examples of high-speed, high-frequency trains around the world, but I would say I don't know of one that operates where there's a temperature differential in the range of about 70 degrees Celsius from winter to summer, and sometimes in some seasons, very drastic changes in the same day. So I cannot give you any examples of something like that. There are trains that operate in colder climate than the south here, the corridor. I'm thinking of Siberia, but they're not high-speed trains.
Thank you, Evo.
In terms of cold weather and the winter, you need to think about also comparing to other modes. So thinking about getting to the airport, getting through security without a Nexus card, and you have dozens of people in front of you with boots and coats and backpacks, the time to get through security, the congestion at Pearson and at Billy Bishop and at Montreal International Airport. These are all things where today, we had great weather, people got where they needed to go, but there's other times where flights get canceled, get prioritized, and especially those hub and spoke out of Toronto and Montreal, those suffer quite a bit in the reductions of service, whether it's to Windsor or to North Bay or to Sept-Îles for folks that are trying to connect to the rest of the country. It's difficult in the cold weather and other modes as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. D'Angelo. And I'll just end off by inviting any of our witnesses today who would like to answer that question by providing examples, perhaps, of high-speed rail that is fully functional around the world with similar climates. It would be greatly appreciated. Avec ça, je passe la parole à M. Barcelo-Duval. Vous avez 2 minutes et demie.
Mr. Barcelo-Duval, 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I was not one of your witnesses, but I can tell you there are some in Finland that seem to work very well, and it's a Nordic climate. My question will be for Mr. Péloquin from Via Rail. In the context of the implementation of a high-frequency or high-speed rail on the northern shore of the St. Lawrence, Drummondville said that they would like to have a hub in Drummondville, and so the Via Rail trains could be maintained there, and there could be a coordination from Drummondville to serve Montreal and Quebec. I'd like to know to what extent is this in your plans, and to what extent have you made any progress? Are you working on this? Thank you. As I was explaining earlier, Via HFR is taking care of all the analysis of the roads and how rail operations will eventually occur. And so our involvement is only to support, because we do have expertise in train operation in Canada right now. So I understand that you're supporting the project on the North Shore, but the South Shore is under your responsibility right now. Are there any preparations on the South Shore, or it's too early? Thank you for the question. The short answer is no, because it's the TGF project. They're taking care of this part of the equation. And so the theory is that we will cede the operation in the current corridor to the new organization. Thank you for the specification. So they will take care of the Montreal-Quebec operation. The Okay, so Mr. D'Angelo, to add to Mr. Badaway's comments, he was talking about the issue of saying, okay, so there's a project, Quebec to Toronto, but elsewhere on the planet, there are almost continental liaisons with high-frequency rail. Do we think that this could be a vision that should be built? How to link with the U.S., with the Canadian West, or even with Mexico, South America? I don't know. Yes, it's important to find a way of making this easier for passengers. There are many possible options for scheduling, and the idea is the high-frequency people have to be able to get to destination easily, and so it might be easy to if the stations are downtown, but they need to be connected to people outside of the downtowns as well, because we have to remember. No, my question. Sorry, your time is up.
Today, we have Mr. Bachrach. Mr. Bachrach, the floor is yours. You have two and a half minutes, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. LeBlanc, you mentioned that one of the reasons the costs of building HFR are higher in Canada than they are in Europe is because companies in this country don't have experience building this kind of rail system. I'm just wondering how, as a country, we gain that capacity and experience if we keep contracting out projects like this to companies from other countries that keep that information proprietary.
Écoutez, merci pour la question. Je pense que c'est une excellente.
Thank you. I think it's a great question. If I speak from the business perspective, we want to build expertise in our country. We want to build competitive businesses to develop projects such as this. Perhaps we missed an opportunity when we had Bombardier to support Bombardier as a rail company in its development. Now there's no longer Bombardier as a Canadian company with regards to rail. The issue is how to make sure that the large international players will localize construction activities here, development of products. And you said it earlier on, we are one of the rare countries in the world to be at the north with very difficult climate. We've seen hydrogen train projects develop on the planet, and maybe we could become a test site for the development of new technologies, hydrogen-powered technologies for trains. So the idea is to build this expertise, as you were saying, perhaps not with the largest project of the history of the country, but progressively speaking, by using all these benefits. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Mr. Bachrach. And that concludes our line of questioning for today. I would like to thank all of our witnesses for appearing this afternoon and for sharing their testimony. I'd like to invite all of our witnesses who are appearing online to log off. For those appearing here in person with us, I ask for your patience as we deal with some committee business that shouldn't take too much time. Colleagues, as you know, we've distributed the budget, the committee's budget for C33. I put forward a motion to adopt the budget, and if there are any lines of questioning or comments, I turn it over to you, Mr. Muse.
Right. And I've not, I will admit, I've not paid attention to the line by line on budgets in the past, but I do question why we're sending out headsets to the cost of $250 a pop. Do we not ask for them back? Can we not recycle, reuse? Like that, like we're spending $5,000 on headsets for a study on a bill that isn't worth the paper it's written on.
Thank you, Mr. Muse, for that. I'll turn it over to our wonderful clerk.
Thank you for the question. So actually, it's 200. It's as written as the budget for the headset, but we don't get it returned because for hygiene purposes, and also the witnesses can appear several times as well with the same headset. So we don't charge a different budget on that.
It seems extremely wasteful to send headsets out and not ask for them back. We can sanitize those. I just make the point.
And thank you, Mr. Muse. If that's actually something you would like
on future budgets, $3,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 on headsets.
If you like, and if it's the will of the members.
By the time 2 million Canadians are going to food banks.
If you like, and it's the will of the members, I can address the issue. I could bring it up at our next liaison committee meeting where we address budget issues concerning committees.
Courier back. You know?
Is that something that the members would perhaps like me to do? I'll turn it over to you, Mr. Bachrach.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I certainly support the intent and direction of Mr. Muse's question. I struggle to imagine a way around this. Like, it seems to me like the costs are the costs. I think that the challenge of recovering the headsets and then sanitizing them, probably paying to have them mailed back, and then sanitizing them could cost more than the cost of the headsets. And I think you get into one of these things where you have declining returns just through the complicated, it's like our recycling system, it just doesn't work. And so I certainly support the spirit. I just wonder if there's some other way we can get at it and cut these costs, because I'm also surprised by how much we're paying to get headsets out. And, you know, the fact that despite all of that expense, we still struggle to have witnesses, heard properly with the right equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So
Thank you, Mr. Bacharach. I'll turn it over to Mr. Rogers, then followed by Mr. Badaway. Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, I understand what Mr. Muse is saying, but I look at it from the opposite perspective. Sending out headsets to witnesses, even though it looks expensive, is probably a lot cheaper than bringing them here to Ottawa for witnesses. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you. And I do believe there was discussion at Liaison Committee where they shared how much we've actually saved thus far with regards to headsets and not having to bring people in, and I think it was in the tens of millions of dollars. So what I can do is I can try and get access to that and share it with the committee. And perhaps I can bring up with Liaison whether or not there's a way that we can reduce the cost as it stands right now under the current model. That's perhaps something I can do.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and well said. So to clarify, when we bring witnesses here, we pay for that. We pay for the witness to travel down here, to stay down here, versus the price of a headset. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Muse. All those in favor of adopting the budget as presented? All those opposed? So noted. The budget passes. Thank you, colleagues. Have a wonderful evening. This meeting is adjourned.